Sohanur and Kayinga.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Jan Reynders. I'm an individual member of the MenEngage Alliance and an activist as well. Work as consultant as an activist, and I've always been working on the link between gender issues and environmental issues, because I see the link is so close, because it's all about power. Power or lack of power and domination and extraction and all these issues that relate both to environmental changes and to gender issues. In that sense, it's not much different. I'd like to start with a question first. Who of you has been able to participate in the webinars during the Ubuntu symposium? Anyone? Right? Okay, that means that some of you have not had the opportunity, because during the Ubuntu symposium, we've had 7 or 8 webinars specifically on the issue of linking patriarchal notions of control and environmental destruction. And these webinars have all been recorded, and I'm going to put the link in the chat because I think it will be useful for you if you're interested to look at these webinars to get more of the issues straight on your mindset and your screen to understand. Now, what do we refer to? Okay, I put it here in the chat, and you can see it whenever you have time. Those are the links to the different webinars that were held during the Ubuntu symposium. Now, the purpose of today is not to change MenEngage Alliance into an environmental organization. Not at all. Let's be clear. But at the same time, because all of us relate to the environment somehow, either we talk about the weather being changing all around us, or farmers getting into trouble, or farmers protesting against subsidies, particularly in Europe, or protesting against the rules and regulations, particularly in Europe. We all relate to environmental issues, and we're dealing with climate change all over the world. And then it is one of the issues that we have to face because it's going to be challenging for the world how we can survive. And you already see nations that are low-lying in terms of their physical conditions, like Bangladesh, or like the Netherlands for that matter, getting inundated with water. Now, the big difference here, just to give the example between Bangladesh and the Netherlands, is the Netherlands is a rich country. And we built our richness on the base of extractions, on the base of colonialization. And based on that, we've been able to build up so much of capital that even today, when we have problems in the rising water, we can increase the heights of our dikes. And we can have modern and sophisticated systems of controlling the water. Even then we have floodings, but then we can control that. And if we have damage, we can pay for the damages internally. Now, Bangladesh is in different conditions. It's also a delta of rivers. But they were not able to extract from other countries. So they're at the receiving end of the flooding. And that goes for some other delta areas as well. I was in Papua New Guinea a few years ago for work, and there already you have climate refugees visibly because the islands they're living on are completely inundated, gone, completely gone because of climate change. Now, climate change is something that we've caused all over the world. And we have to acknowledge, all of us, that that's part and parcel of the whole extraction capitalist neoliberal system. It started during colonial period of extraction and our systems of monoculture, changing the biodiversity in the different countries in the world. And by now, I think there's enough knowledge, and feminist thinking has been showing the link between climate change and patriarchy, patriarchal notions of extraction, dominance, power over, as we called it during the Ubuntu symposium. And that has led to systems of unsustainable agriculture, systems of unsustainable industrial extraction, mining systems, and all that. So we're part and parcel of that. And in the past, it was primarily colonial issues that was dominated by the global north. Today, we can see that this has changed. We find some powerful companies and individuals in the global south as well. I mean, Bolsonaro in Brazil has been allowing the forest to be cut for the profit of the rich people in his country. I was just giving the example to Sohanur. In the Netherlands, the largest industrial polluter is Tata Steel, which is an Indian company. and they refuse to do anything about the pollution in the neighboring villages. And if the neighboring villages are now protesting, there's a likelihood that the industry will withdraw. As a result, these people get jobless. So there is the conflict of how do we deal with environmental issues, who has caused it, and whose responsibility for that. Now, if you look at what's happened in terms of environmental issues, there's been quite some history of women's groups, women's movements active in the field of addressing climate issues. And not just women's groups. I mean, it has been in the last few years, we can actually see, especially among young people, we see new movements. We see the Fridays for Future movement, as you may have heard about. You see the youth climate strikes, and they are spreading all over the world, as a matter of fact, in getting more attention to the issue of climate change caused by human beings. Now, as an alliance, as MenEngage Alliance, we're here to address and dismantle patriarchal masculinities, because that is what is happening. That's how we have gender inequality, we have domination, and we have climate problems as well. And if we don't want to address that, we have to take our responsibility and do whatever we can. That does not mean we all need to become environmental movements, but we can be allies to existing environmental movements and add our analysis to that. Because many of the environmental movements don't make the connection with gender issues. They talk about the industries, not making those links. The more we can make those links with both the historical issues of extraction and male domination, patriarchal domination, and today's forms of extraction, the more we can do that, the more we can help the movements to build allies, to get more people on board for campaigns, for changes, and for activism that is required. Now, why are we saying that this is a movement that really requires the notion of patriarchal masculinities as a form of analysis? It is, if we look around the world, it is, and that's also quite often the result of feminist analysis, men in power are less likely to live conscious lifestyles. They have the money, they can use the money the way they like, and their lifestyles are usually not very environmentally conscious. They very often deny even the climate change issues. And we see people in political power that have been denying that for a long, long time. They're more likely to think in short-term economic gains rather than long-term protection and investments. If you look at their ecological footprints, they're usually very large. And if you look at the way they use the shareholders' power to make more profits rather than protect the earth, we see how men are often directly involved in those processes. And very often you find that men find it more difficult to even consider their individual role and their company's roles in the change process. And as a result, men are often more part of the problem than part of the solution. Of course, you find exceptions, you find people who really want to work on that. And I think our role as MenEngage Alliance is to help people to see those links and to help them address the issues. And if I just give an example, in the Netherlands, we have been pushing farmers to produce more and more food with subsidies from the European Union. That's not just in the Netherlands, it's all over Europe. As a result, at this moment, we have 11 million pigs in the Netherlands. We have 16 million people, 11 million pigs, and 4 million cows. Now, we can never feed those animals with the food that we produce ourselves. So we import loads and loads of food. The result now is that we are stuck with so much of dung, the slurry, as Shay was talking about, that is now being dumped on the soil. But then, of course, if you do that, you get ammonia all over in the air, which is polluting the environment more and more. Now, we've been pushing farmers to do so, and farmers are now saying, oh, no, you can't take that away from us, because no farmers, no food. Now, you see these billboards in the Netherlands, no farmers, no food. And yet 80% of the food they produce is for export. So we're not producing for the country, we're producing for profit making. Now, unless we start acknowledging those issues, and that is each country has a different rulings, unless we start acknowledging that, we will not be able to change the process. So that's one of the issues that we need to address. And this was just a brief introduction. What we did then is to actually consider during the Ubuntu Symposium and after the Ubuntu Symposium, what can we do as MenEngage? And we started a working group. Already in 2016, we already had our first paper on environmental issues. But then after the Ubuntu Symposium, we got together with a number of people. How can we organize ourselves within the MenEngage Alliance? And we started this working group on climate change and climate justice. At this moment, we are spread quite all over the world, I would say, in the MenEngage Alliance. We're 25 members. We even have 2 members in Australia, which makes meetings quite a challenge because we have major time gaps between different zones of the world. And that's something we still need to deal with. But that's one of the issues that we like to address as MenEngage Alliance, as a working group within the MenEngage Alliance. Now I'd like to give the floor to Sohanur, who's been active from the very start and who's been very active in Bangladesh and at the global level. Sohanur, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Jan. And you rightly mentioned and make a picture about the climate justice or ground for climate justice issues. So I want to share a brief about my story, because you know I am from Bangladesh, and Bangladesh is a most affected countries in the world due to climate change. And it's not only climate change; it's also impacted by colonization. Like our country was colonized for 200 years. So nowadays, climate change induced disaster also creating more poverty to our country. And our carbon footprint is a very minimal, 0.04%, very minimal. But major cause for our emission is cloth, garments. And we are sending that clothes, that garments to the Europe. And Europe can buy cheap clothes, but it's costing our river, our air, our environment. But I want to share my story. Like, I am from a coastal district of Bangladesh, and I am a cyclone survivor. So when I was a class 7 grade student, I faced or witnessed or first time met with climate crisis. It is a devastating cyclone Cedar, and that night was a nightmare to me, and still I am feeling that trauma of that cyclone, because after that night I found my community is devastated. Crops are damaged, houses are collapsed. So then I joined with the child rights based activism, especially child parliament, to empowering or working with the children, to engaging with them with the parliamentarian process. And when I started working with the child rights, I found child marriage is the biggest concern for child rights, as well as the gender issues also, because Bangladesh also one of the most child marriage prone country in the world. And when I started with to stopping child marriage, so in Bangladeshi traditional approach is to vandalize child marriage event, marriage ceremony. So I started thinking the root cause of child marriage. Why fathers are marrying off their daughter for marriage in their childhood? So I found 3 major cause for behind the child marriage issue. One is a disaster. Like when the natural disasters are increasing, so disasters are not impacting rich and poor equally. So rich people can cope with this disaster, but poor people, they are taking child marriage as a negative coping mechanism, and child labor also, because children, boy children, they have responsibility to feed the family or take the charge for family. So people are sending their boys to the like bricklin or the some work, how the boys can support their family, and they send or marry of their daughter for child marriage. So disaster, distance, and poverty are creating child marriage in our community, in coastal community in Bangladesh. So day by day I engaged with the gender movement also to ending child marriage, and then I joined men and boys engagement, a program of MenEngage Alliance. And in 2019 I joined with MenEngage Alliance for a project. It's the SRHR for all, sexual reproductive health and rights for everyone, not only adolescent and and the boys. But in 2016, I visited a remote islands, and I found 8,000 people in the middle of the Bay of Bengal, and but they have no minimum basic services like education. Girls cannot continue education after 5th grade. So when we are talking to parents, don't marry your girls. So they are asking what solution we have, what the way we have, because we have no schools. And school, if they send to their daughter to schools, they need money to cost of boat fare. They have no nutritious food, drinking water, even shelter houses. But those people are not responsible for climate crisis. They are not consuming meat. They can't consuming meat. They have no service for refrigeration, air condition. So they are not contributing not, but they are paying highest price and bearing the burden of climate crisis. Then I thought it's the injustice. So I have to bring justice for this community who are not responsible for climate crisis. And I backed my city and started a network named YouthNet with 25 youth-led organization, organized a youth-led conference in Borishal, developed a youth declaration, presented that declaration in parliament. And you know about the Greta Thunberg effect, when the girls from Stockholm started the climate strike. And we also expressed solidarity because Greta is not much affected. She will be affected. But in Bangladesh, we are already affected. We are lost, we are damaged. So we have to be more vocal, more strong for the climate justice movement. Then we started the global climate strike. But in Bangladesh, the difference between youth movement in Bangladesh and Europe, so sometimes people are joining a strike, making protest, a cleanup campaign. But we are also supporting, we are also doing a strike, but we also working with the policymaker to change the policy, building trust as well as community action. Though we are not a service delivery organization, as a movement building organization or advocacy organization, but when the flood extreme event came or hit our community, so government, NGOs, they have to fail support the people who are in the crisis. So we young people take the responsibility in our own shoulder. So we have no space to decision making level. We have no investment for young people led organization, but we are managing. We are trying to support the people. So when I joined the MenEngage Alliance, I found some root cause for the climate crisis. So as a generally young people, we thought only tree plantation, only plastic collection is the solution. But what is the root cause? So then I found the capitalism, colonialism, extraction, and domination of men. Because this climate crisis, it's a man-made crisis, is a sexist crisis. And when we are talking the environmental crisis, currently we have three planetary crises. One is climate crisis, second one biodiversity loss, and third one pollution, especially air pollution, plastic pollution, and sound pollution. But when we are talking climate crisis, climate change is normal. Climate will be changed. But when it's changing rapidly, it's the problem. And that change caused by the industrial revolution. So that's why climate crisis is not a just environmental issue or development issue. Climate change is an economic issue. And when it's an economic issue and the fight between a global north and south or US and China, so everyone try to ensure their GDP, their growth, but they are not, and their internal economy, internal development. But we are not thinking the planetary growth, planetary development, future of planet. So we are limiting us only for our national interest. So then I joined MenEngage Alliance Global Working Group to addressing men and masculinity issue in our activism. In Bangladesh, young people, day by day, they are much interested to join environmental activism, to planting trees, for plastic collection, but they are not interested about gender. They're not interested about the transgender issue. And now it's the biggest backlash in Bangladesh to addressing gender equality and justice. So my last point is for the men and boys engagement for gender equality. We must recognize that linkage, what I highlighted and Ian highlighted. Second one, challenge gender norms. Men and boys also interested to contribute for environmental protection or climate issues, but the society creating problem that men should be violent, men should be cutting the trees, men should cut the forest, but men can be careful, men can be careful to environment and our climate, as well as policy changes, because our most of the policy in Bangladesh, it's just mentioning about the women participation, but it's not the transformative approach. So when the policy should be transformed, it should be highlighted the men and boys engagement. And last issue is a corporate accountability. Corporate business, they have huge responsibility to ensure human rights and planetary justice. And day by day corporate capture, like in previous COP, conference of the parties. So I started my COP journey from Glasgow into 2021. So that time 503 fossil fuel lobbyists joined the Scotland Glasgow conference. In COP27 in Sharm el Sheikh, 636 lobbyists joined the COP process to to stopping or to blocking the climate decision about the phase out fossil fuel. And last one in Dubai in 2023 COP28, 2,456 lobbyists joined the COP. So day by day, COP is going to a field of the fossil fuel lobbies and business. But day by day, women, young people, they are losing their space. Civil society, they're losing their space from COP. But young people are getting a space as a negotiator, young negotiator, and different kind of initiative. So we passed 28 COPs to recognize that we have to transition, but not fully transition away. But where? From fossil fuel to whom? Which place? But no answer. So we need cross movement building, because it's a climate crisis is part of systematic crisis. So we are divided in different silo: youth movement, civil society movement, student movement, workers movement, racial movement. So now we should be build a cross movement to change this patriarchal system, this dominant system, to ensure equality, ensure justice, ensure equity, and planetary protection. Thank you. Over to Jan.
Thank you, Sohanur. Thank you so much. Kayinga, are you able to share your experience?
Yeah, I'm not sure Kayinga's. Oh yeah, there you are. Okay.
Yeah, Kayinga is there, but I'm not sure whether his connection is strong enough. Ah, there you are. Good, good. Okay.
Maybe how many minutes should I share my story so that I remain in line with the program?
Say it again. Sorry, I missed it.
Time. Which time do I need to use? How many minutes?
About 8-9 minutes. Yep. Yeah. If that's possible.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm just a backyard because I'm not to join this engagement. I think my experience stems in the work that I have been doing. And I think as a artist,
Kayinga, it's very difficult to hear. Could you try to speak close to the microphone? It's very difficult to hear.
Okay. Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. While the work that I'm doing as an activist, my passion moves me, from at 8 years when I left an orphan, and I realized that there was a discrimination in vulnerable people, but the discrimination really was more systemic in a manner that like in a country when a child loses the parents, there is no system in the government that has to support such. So you end up doing nothing. So in my work with Cotphone from the year 2006, I encountered so many things, looking at climate crisis, but not trying to really get the information why such is happening when we are just trying to address it, but not really addressing the root causes. So we used to really see parts of men, the patriarchal kind of society that we are living in, actions done by men, but most importantly, men in power in a manner that the decision that they make really finally affects the most vulnerable people. For example, girls, women. So we realize that women, where the decisions of men, especially in power, are very catastrophic. Then we also looked at, I think time goes by. That's when I came to realize MenEngage around 2017, working on engaging men and boys for gender equality. So it was a lesson for us to see how can there be separation of men and boys in ourselves on the action we do. But later on, I think then that is during the symposium, I think that MenEngage we made a big reflection where this discussion is, because we are in an era of crisis, but over the time, this issue has not been addressed from a root cause perspective, but it would just be addressed from like symptom perspective, just trying to say let us plant trees, but even if you plant trees, there is one actor who is going to cause disaster for the people that you have done to plant the trees. So I think this became very, very critical for us. And that's also when I came to realize there's a lot of destruction of environment in the country, in this guising of investment. And like, for example, we see the wetlands that would be protected by the government in the interest of the mother earth, the people. They are being taken by Chinese companies. Who are exposing them, who are doing chemicals, and they have all the birds, the ecosystems being destructed, and they get licenses, and they are not really following anything. So we come to realize, now we see the corporations, now we are seeing corporate capture, because when somebody comes and says, I have money, the money, if they would kill the systems, would kill the laws, order from above. Then that's when now in the year 2018 and 2019, the issue of oil pipeline came in my country and in my region specifically, because already from 2006, there was the oil movement in the Midwestern Uganda. But then as the investors looking at exporting our crude oil for the national market, for them to really gain more profits, and that is a company, coming from Europe, that's energies, that's based in France, and they're now trying to do all this kind of disaster in only my region. In the whole country, the pipeline is over 500 people, and already in my region, there are over 2,000 people being displaced by this oil pipeline. And now I came to realize that much as we will be talking about preservation of the environment, preservation of our wetlands, but when governments and the cliques, I would say the government, cliques, some mafias, in the government, make use of this kind of business, they don't mind about the environmental challenges, the human rights abuses, and I have finally, because I stood to defend the rights of the environment and the human beings on the people in the oil pipeline corridor, I've been threatened. Just in 1 year, last year, my home and the office was raided twice in the interval of 6 months. The first raid was in February, the second raid was in September. So you realize that now, because we're talking about the destructions which are being done by cliques in the government because they are connected, and these are men, or tenders are being taken by just a few men in the country. The decisions, the president himself stands and say, I'm supporting this kind of oil destruction, but not examining the impacts, the negative impacts it's causing. This is the pipeline that if there's any linkage, any oil spill, it will go directly to Lake Victoria, the biggest lake on the continent, and over 40 million people who are being served by this Lake Victoria stand to suffer because of an oil spill. But these companies are not minding about that, you know. And then now you realize that all these impacts will go back to the marginalized groups in the communities, including children, including women, including girls, because of the patriarchal system that we are living in the country. So the tackle climate crisis has come in the angle of addressing, I think, the linkages between patriarchal norms and climate crisis. Without getting that linkage clear, then it means it's time now to speak to men in power, to speak to men, but to change their mindset, because their decisions, because you are the president and they are a man. Then when you make a decision that we are going to invest in oil in the country, you are not minding about the wildlife. They bring oil in a national park where companies have been earning millions of money from tourists. Now the companies are going to invade, the animals are going away, and that is the ecosystem that is helping the country to survive. But they're not minding about that. We're seeing corporate capture where people are crying, but nothing is being done because those in the corporations have money. They have bribed leaders. So nothing can really happen. People can just, suffer, and then they go silent. When you raise up your hand, when you raise up your voice, you have to be killed. You have to be stage managed. You have to be blackmailed. This is the kind of life that we are living in. When we are talking about this kind of destructive projects that are being run, and because we are seeing men behind these projects, one person taking the contract, for the whole project, and the application will be that this country, yet it is just benefit that one individual man, and disguising as a national project, but when it's not. So we see this kind of impunity. But what is the important to get climate just talking to how do we work toward dismantling this patriarchal and the connectivity, have the linkage made more clear, the linkage between and the climate crisis. And they see that now men can make reflection. We can see that the systems, we have systems change, we go beyond the rhetoric talking, but these are things that have to be talked about. Men in power, how can they be accountable for their actions? Because all these disasters that we are seeing, the majority of the decision maker are men in power. We have to reverse the colonialism that we are saying. How can a company that the total energies come and silence the whole country because it has money? Because that is corporate capture. Then until when can we really stand on our own rights? When can we protect the environmental rights? When the corporations are killing the whole system, they are bribing everything, they are bribing the leaders, and now we as citizens, women and the girls at the grassroots levels, they can no longer say anything. So I feel this is the tragedy that we are living in, but with this kind of movement that we are working with, I'm representing Africa on the MenEngage Group Working Group on climate, on environment and the climate justice. So I'm happy that we do all these kind of things. I'm a defender. So I feel that with connection and the being part of this MenEngage Europe webinar, we can see we have already started to work with man in Europe, that is around the gender and climate justice project, trying to dismantle this project, empowering boys and the men into respecting the environment, and really seeing that they champion the environmental practices that are really very important for the communities. So the work that we have already started working on with man, together with Sohana in Bangladesh, I feel that we can see how we can also connect with the wider Europe and see how we strengthen our grassroots. We are grassroots people. We are working grassroots and communities affected by all these disasters. We are flooding in the country. We are seeing a lot of in Uganda. But all these are out of the wrong decisions that are being taken up by leaders by men in power, and then we have now to challenge them. We can dialogue with them, but we also need to put a momentum, like as we call, to have a solid movement that speaks and we get the facts on paper. And then we should be able to address gender and climate crisis in the world today. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Kayinga. Thank you very much. I'm sorry that sometimes the line is not so good, but we have to live with that. That's how it goes. I hope it was still sufficiently clear to all of you what the different situations are, what we are dealing with around the world. And now the question, of course, is for the MenEngage Europe membership, how does that relate to the work we do in the different countries of Europe, and how does that relate to MenEngage Global Alliance? I'll just put in the link that you can look at later of the working group on climate change that we have on the global website. But I put the link in the chat now. Now, what I would like to do is actually go into smaller groups to look at some of the questions that we may want to address as MenEngage Europe. And I think, Louis, if you can put the questions on the screen, and then we can go into smaller groups, we can discuss what it means for us as individual countries and what we could do to address the issues jointly.
So I just shared the 4 questions that you had in the chat now, and I'm thinking also they're actually going to be with you in the breakout rooms as well. Otherwise, I will post them there as well.
Well, so the questions actually are quite basic. One is, does it make sense to you? What we've shared with you, does it make sense? The link between patriarchy and environmental and climate justice issues. And then number 2, a question for each of you in your countries. Are you in contact with local or national groups that work on these issues? And are they working on the gender issues as well within their movements? And do you or your organization already engage with these organizations to join hands? And then the last question is really, what can we as MenEngage Alliance within Europe, how can we be allies to environmental movements in your countries, but also around the world, to make sure that the changes are actually moving in a positive direction rather than adding to more destruction? So these are the questions we have, and then whatever questions you have from the presentations, you may want to discuss it there, and we can also discuss it finally when we come back in the plenary.
And how big shall the breakout rooms be?
Make it.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna be. I see Shay's leaving now, so thanks, Shay, for being with us. I think Harriet couldn't be in the small group, as I remember. Somebody else. So I think like 4 people in this room, maybe.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So sorry. It's about.
So maybe 4, like 3 groups with 4 people each.
Yeah.
And the people who cannot be with us, it's fine. You don't have to join the room.
Yep.
So maybe some room is going to be 3, maybe.
Okay, I open up now and.
Yeah, and we have about 10 minutes. So start with a round, like, so everybody introduces and then take the question that you want to address.
All right. Okay.
Okay, so I open them, and how much time is it? Did you say? Sorry.
10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Louis, if you can put the questions again in the working groups.
Yeah, I will. Okej, men då går jag in i någon grupp där då, eller? Ska se.
Ja, men kanske mittengruppen där tror jag kan vara bra med lite stöd.
Ska jag gå in i mitten av gruppen? Ja.
Ja, gör det.
Då går jag med. Okej, bra. Vi ses.
The other groups are not wanting to stop.
Okay, great. I think we're back in the. Is everybody back, Alice? Can you see it?
I think
Yes,
we-
not Kayinga is not for some reason has not really gotten back yet, it seems.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we had some people who had to leave before, so
Yeah.
but yeah, but let's. I mean, we do have like maybe 10-15 minutes to have a discussion in the big group. Somebody wants to share something that came up in your breakout rooms, please do.
Or questions that you have to Sohan or
Yeah, exactly.
myself.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's like the floor is open, so now everybody can chip in here.
Or perhaps you want to share some highlights from your discussion.
I can share just a small from our room. We kind of were in this. So we were discussing the masculinity norms versus the climate crisis and the notion of how is it to be a man, and it's it's linked to a lot, like the stereotypes are being linking to the things about meat and cars and also about competition is like to be the best or whatever.
Mm.
And it's kind of, and yeah, so we discussed it that it's kind of like, because you mentioned a lot, all the three of you, like men in power and how they work and how they, but so it's almost like men in powers are taking those stereotypes and kind of making them, taking to another level, and even not noticing that they're actually damaging like a lot, doing a lot of damage. And usually you have this thought about power being like destructive, or like it corrupts your in some way, the power. If you get power, you don't see stuff. So this is, yeah, so we saw some linkages there between like young men who think that they should eat a lot of meat and be maybe sexual active a lot and stuff like that, with men in power who are like doing this to the earth or whatever in some kind of way, like being destructive. Yeah, so that's something that we talked about, and how just being like a vegetarian or vegan, whatever, it's like putting you like, oh, you're like a feminine, or you're not, yeah, maybe you're not a real man or whatever, stuff like that. Yeah.
Who else? Feel free to share your thoughts or your questions or what you discussed in your group. New insights.
I will just share with my feeling, but this is after the presenter from Bangladesh. I had this core feeling of guilt, like especially like when you were talking about the clothes that you export, and it's like a pressure on Bangladesh. And I'm from Armenia, and many shops, especially brands which we import from Europe, are produced. The clothes are done in Bangladesh, and I just want to say that this is like a pressure on countries like Armenia also. As a consumer, I don't have much alternatives. Like there are so many clothes imported from Europe which are made in Bangladesh, and this is like a pressure through global north on global south to consume also products produced in global south. And yeah, I just don't know how to deal with this feeling of guilt, like as systemically I'm in this here, and okay, I consume my own clothes but yeah, I hope you understand. So thank you very much for the presentation. It was very interesting, and I also felt some healthy level of anger, if I may say so, but it is so understandable. Just sharing my feeling here. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Inessa.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It gets you for sure. So thank you for sharing that. Anybody else who wants to share something connected to the questions, or just a feeling, or just a comment, or question maybe?
Yeah, I can say something.
Yeah.
Like I was in the same room as Luis, so good summary of our discussion. But I want to add something. There's this idea also between young men that like protesting for the environment and caring and like doing any type of activism or demonstration is like feminine, and is like look at those snowflakes. You know this idea. Like I don't know how this like became a normal idea. It's all everywhere. Like this idea that any type of activism or protesting is like it's not a manly thing. It's look at those snowflakes. They should become real men, and they don't have a work. You know this. I don't know how this like became the norm. Like a lot of people think this way, and I think I don't know. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, it's some kind of like caring. So caring for more than yourself, or just or for something bigger. It's not seen as it's seen like the woman thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like very weird, very confusing. Like, how did we get there? Like actually, really weird.
Well, I would say it's traditional notions of how a man should be. And if you deviate from that, you're criticized, first of all, in your own group. Why don't you drive a bigger car, even bigger car, bigger car? And all these cars are polluting more, and they cost more, and they're extracting more. So, but if you give into that, and the moment you say, okay, no, I don't actually need a car, I can go by bicycle, and that's what I do. I can go by bicycle. What? Don't you have a car? What's wrong with you? Are you a man? No, and I think if we don't get out of that notion, we continue to contribute. And I think it's also important to help man to get out of the idea of that's the only way you can be a man. Because you can be a caring man, you can look after the environment, you can actually be part of the solution rather than continue to be part of the problem. But that's his own process, because first of all, your own peers will push you to actually, be big, and change your clothing every time. Get the latest fashion. And again, getting on to what Inessa was saying, buy the latest fashion. I mean, fashion goes so fast, and it only can go so fast because we have cheap clothing imported from particularly Bangladesh and some other countries as well, Sri Lanka. And that means that the fashion is so short-lived that we continue to contribute. And that's not just men only, for that matter. I mean, it's also women. But if we feel as man, we have to be big, we have to be on top of that. Oh no, don't care about pollution. No, that's not our issue. No? And I think if we start supporting men who do this protest and give them the idea of, well, you're a real man. You are actually what a man should do. Take responsibility for your own action. Take responsibility for what you buy. Take responsibility for what you pollute and your carbon footprint, however, whatever that is. And I think we can all contribute to that. But we need to understand that if we don't support these men in their change process, they will find it very difficult, because the pressure on them to continue traditional ways is very hard. Right, who else likes to contribute?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with your like analysis, actually. Very good. Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to contribute or share or question, or just a thought that you have, difficulties you face?
Kayinga, I think Kayinga is trying to come in.
Yes, please.
I think, are you hearing me?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, for me, what I know the meeting is interesting, but I think this has been a kick-off engagement with the wider MenEngage Europe, which I feel that since we are seeing devoted countries, at the center of the environmental destruction, especially in the developing countries like Africa, we strategize on how we can really have further engagement. I know as a working group, we are having a face-to-face meeting later this year. I feel that here, maybe you can work with the DNC, how also can have engagement with you in Europe, because in your place as working group for MenEngage, climate justice, and then see how we can continue supporting each other, especially with the grassroots organizations. Perhaps I know that the efforts that the money has done to scale up some engagements with our countries, with the Africa, there could be other engagements or partnerships we can also explore with the organizations you are representing in your respective countries, so that you try to globalize the action. This awareness is more now in Europe or in countries on gender equality, but it is still wanting in African countries like developing countries. So I feel that anything, be it capacity building, be it in knowledge sharing with grassroots organizations like the one we are representing, Kotifon in Uganda, would be the key, so that we are able to bring these actors to account from as we will be engaging in Parliament. I hope the voices will be reaching to all nations represented in the European Parliament. So I feel slowly we will be, achieving a greater impact. So may I will call upon any potential partnerships that we can continue building, so that we can take this from talking about it on webinars, but into tangible actions on ground. And then we could have learning circles where we are able to exchange how things are happening in the Netherlands, how can we do that in Africa, so that we really have a global working force around this and the power prong of redirecting this kind of action. For me, that's this is everywhere. It's now a global challenge, global disaster. That we really have to make our ones more real, so that they also come into countries, our parliaments, in our governments, and etc. So that this becomes a norm and a trend, that things can change systematically. But we need to see system change from countries where we see resource extraction, where the countries are not benefiting. Everything is just taken out of countries for the development of even those who are developed, and to see how we can push back corporate capture that we are seeing, and the responsible leadership that we are able to call to action. As for me, that's what I would say as my participation.
Thank you so much, Kayinga. Thank you. Well, I think that's a task for us in MenEngage Europe. How can we connect more? Because many of the men in power that also control what's happening through companies in the global south are in the global north. So we are in a position to actually address these people, find these people, and take more actions. I think that's one of our duties and responsibilities. And we can do it together, of course, with environmental movements who are more in the direct connection. But we can give a link to the patriarchal notions in that. And I think that's our duty.
Okay, so we have to start wrapping up here. Sohanur, you want to say something, but then we can maybe if you can make it part of the checkout for this. So just please go ahead, and then we will pass the word around and check out from the meeting. Please, Sohanur.
Yeah, thank you. And Ian already mentioned about the changing the narrative of the real man. That real man will care the planet, and when we are choosing like car rather than cycle, so it's a living standard. So car cannot be living standard. And when some people are walking by foot, it's not his poverty. Or I am using the recycled cloth or using previous dress is not means I am poverty. I have money, but I cannot pollute the planet, because it's a common rights for everyone. Last one, you already highlighted the corporate responsibility or brand responsibility, as well as already Jan mentioned historical responsibility. And now when we are talking about the pollution, so one of the biggest debate between that China is the highest polluter, so and India is the third, US is second. So now China and India, they are polluting more, and they are claiming right to development, because Europe, they build their economy by polluting the planet and the harming the environment. So global South also have right to development, but but not in a wrong way like Europe. And China and India is not developed countries, but developed countries has historical responsibility of 200 years colonization and the extraction. So polluters must pay. So financing issue, climate finance, so they committed $100 billion by 2021, and every year new additional grants, but they are not fulfilling their promise on the climate finance. They're not fulfilling their promise for the energy transition or just transition or phasing out from fossil fuel. So now they are committing for some support for loss and damage, or some support for adaptation, but they are not in a strong position to just transition or the limiting the emission. So we must be vocal about the not only transition away, about the full, fair, funded transition from the renewable fossil to renewable, as well as support to affected countries like Bangladesh or Vanuatu or Tonga or Tuvalu or Africa for adapting with climate change, and more support for the loss and damage that already conducted. So that approach should be localized approach, locally led adaptation. That's mean all the climate related decision and resource allocation will be controlled by the local people. So you can raise voice, you can advocate with European Union, and cross movement building between gender community, environmental community. So it's not separated issue. And how the youth movement in Europe can address men and masculinity, gender issues in their wider environmental movement. And so we can exchange our, because our main fight is same. And for the climate crisis, we think peoples are responsible, and we are blaming the people. But only one person is responsible, who are the richest billionaire or trillionaire, and the most vulnerable countries 25. So they are emitting only 5% emission. African continent only emitting 3%. So population is not issue. So normal people think population is problem. But now it's time to control the richest people and accountable them. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Sohanur.
Well, thank you everyone for coming today. I put in the chat again the links to the different webinars on this issue that were taking place during the Ubuntu Symposium. And the second link is the link to the Climate Justice Working Group information, and all the information we have on the Global MenEngage website. If you can also share that with other people if you feel that might be interested in seeing these issues. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Jan and Sohanur and Kayinga specifically for giving us this. If anybody wants to say bye and check out, you just go ahead and we will start closing. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Have a nice weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Here. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
All right.
maybe.
Nice weekend.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jan. Thanks that we did this.
And it was recorded, right? Oh, this is
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we can stop the recording now, maybe.
All right. Thanks very much. Okay.